For our first story today, just imagine an hours-long ride down the interstate, standing up and squeezed in next to someone you barely know. Well, that's way of life for the majority of cattle being moved from the feedlot to the harvesting facility. To lessen the stress on the animals and to help ensure a safe journey for all involved, National Beef Quality Assurance has developed a new BQA Transportation Program. Rob Eirich is the Nebraska Director of Beef Quality Assurance and an extension beef educator. He joined me to talk about the program and how you can become certified.
We're kind of looking at two different things. With feeder cattle, most of these cattle at least have been on the road in transit at least once in their lifetime, if not more. And so we're going to kind of talk about those. They're probably their final transportation piece, and those cattle will spend some time. They'll be brought up to those pens, and then from the pen next to the loadout chutes, they'll be sorted by different weights or even different numbers to go in different compartments of these trailers. And then a lot of these cattle, for feeder cattle, the average is 2.5 hours in transit, 130 to 150 miles. But when we start thinking about that's the average, when we did a 2016 audit with transportation, the average time was at 2.5, but the longest time on the road was up to 9 hours. And so these cattle then get put on these trucks and in their standing position for that duration of time. And then once they get to the plant, they'll be unloaded, put into holding pens, but those holding pens aren't really pens where they can relax and get comfortable because they will be started through the process fairly quickly. And so that time on the road really starts to stress those animals. It's that endpoint, something not familiar with them. And so you just get a lot add up to that. But also with market cows and bulls, you get the same type of situation, but the only thing is a lot of those plants are a lot farther away from these ranches where these animals are being called from, and so a longer distance of time kind of adds up there. And so there's just a lot of stress involved for both the driver, the handlers, and those people all the way through that process.
And Rob, what about bruising during transport? How does that affect the final product once it has reached the processing facility?
Well, there's a lot of situations. We had an increase of bruises. 39% of fed cattle had a bruise on them. And those bruises could be from improper handling. They could be facilities where they get overcrowded, they bump into sides and those type of things. It could be trailers that are inadequate in size because the frame size of our cattle have increased. And so those compartment heights are still the same as they've been. We're starting to see some modifications, but every time they bump or bruise or bump into anything or something hits them, they have a higher risk of bruising. And we look at bruises as being, 39%, but 77% of those are minor bruises where we have to trim out 1 pound of carcass weight, and that might be about the size of a deck of cards. Then there's 20% that are major, which is 1 to 10 pounds. Now, when we start talking about these bruises and how severe they are, a minor bruise, 1 pound or less of trim, is going to cost us $1.80. That was with 2016 numbers. And then the value in 2016, if we had a minor or a major bruise, we're talking $28 a carcass. And so each one of those bruises are starting to cost us. So we have to look at how we can use some low stress, effective handling of these animals to make sure we don't get those high risk of bruising situations through that whole process.
Okay. So I'd like to learn a bit more about the new Beef Quality Assurance Transportation Program. What's new here? What's already been working? And what do you want to continue with the program?
Well, in February of 2018, the National Beef Quality Assurance Program put together a brand new training program for transporters, both the farmer rancher, but also our professional drivers. And it all comes down to best management practices. And we go through this process from planning out that travel time to plan out, what our densities are per compartment in that load and how we handle these cattle with the least amount of stress. But also we talk about these extremes as we discuss weather extremes, making sure we're not sitting and waiting and those type of things as well. And so when you look at that, this new program really focuses on all of those pieces, and it was really designed from a group of people, not only in transportation, but producers, experts in the area of animal handling, and some of our packers are involved as well. And so we looked at all the areas to really help these drivers. And so when we talk about doing the training and getting them on board, we've done this in the past, but not quite as put together in a real nice format as we have now, where they can do it online or in person.
And you mentioned the best management practices. Anything else you want to speak on as to how that relates with the new BQA Transportation Program? Anything else we need to know here?
You know, one of the pieces that we really focus on is making sure they have kind of a pre-trip plan and kind of go through that whole process. But with that, those best management practices and having that documentation of what their plan is and what they're hauling and all that paperwork, it's also going to help them in any case of working with the carrier enforcement, DOT, State Patrol as well, in any situation they might encounter emergency-wise, or in case of a situation where they might have an issue where the truck or drivers put out of service on that side of things too. But again, pretty important to have all those best management practices in place because they are a very integral part of our industry.